people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this per tweet from Michael Benson. Earlier this week, Bob Arum was asked about Gervonta Davis versus Ryan Garcia, and he said,
I don't see it happening. Floyd Mayweather was very content to take easier fights to build a major fight when it made a lot of money. Garcia wins decisively. I think he has more talent, and he's the naturally bigger guy.
Bob thinks Ryan Garcia has more talent than Gervonta Davis? He thinks he'd beat him?
Not just beat him, he said he'd beat him decisively.
Given that Gervonta Davis is further along in his career than Ryan Garcia is in his, that Gervonta Davis is, 27, going on 28 years old?
Of the two, he is the more experienced fighter. It's safe to say that. Even if you don't have much of an opinion on their quality of competition, their resumes.
Of the two, Gervonta Davis is the more experienced fighter, wouldn't you say? And yet Bob Arum thinks Ryan would beat him. I, like many of you out there, have my reservations when it comes to Gervonta Davis's career, how he's matched, the quality of his competition, and what it should look like, could look like, if they wanted to put him in there with good fighters, really good fighters. Though you have to agree that Gervonta Davis, least to the eye, is at least a stronger puncher than Luke Campbell.
The now retired Luke Campbell, Olympian.
The guy who floored Ryan Garcia well over a year ago. I mean, if Luke Campbell can make Ryan Garcia hit the deck, don't you think that Gervonta Davis could do a little better? Well, Luke Campbell, like Ryan Garcia, very statuesque guy for 135 pounds.
A lot has happened since then. Some things have changed.
Ryan Garcia isn't with Eddie Reynoso and Team Canelo anymore. He now has veteran trainer, denim master, Joe Goosen.
I gotta tell you, Ryan did look really good the last time I saw him fighting Javier Fortuna up there at 140 pounds.
If he were to fight Gervonta Davis, I kind of get the sense it wouldn't be at 140. I get the sense it'd be at 135 down there at lightweight.
Bob thinks Ryan beats this guy.
Do you think that Bob is taking a dig at Floyd and Leonard by saying that Ryan would beat their star pupil, their star fighter? Really, their only fighter.
Really all they've got.
I don't know. I don't see Bob taking digs at Floyd or Al these days much. If he's taking digs at anybody, it's at Eddie Hearn more than those guys, so I'm not sure that this is Bob taking a dig at them. Maybe he's serious. Maybe he really believes Ryan Garcia would beat Gervonta Davis, though broaching that idea, what would Ryan have working for him against a more experienced fighter, a southpaw, a hard-punching southpaw?
Well, he is taller and longer than Gervonta. He's got speed of his own.
Does have height, length, and speed. It would be up to Gervonta Davis to try and close the gap and land something hard, but Gervonta Davis, not being an, according to Hoyle, pressure fighter, he's actually more of a boxer-puncher, a counter-puncher. It's a tricky situation for the smaller guy, and Gervonta is the smaller guy. Ryan seems to have a good stick, good jab.
You saw all the success that Rolly Romero was having behind his jab, and he's nowhere near as fast as Ryan.
I don't think he's as good a boxer as Ryan is either, if I'm being honest. And if Rolly Romero was able to have any success at all, employing that lead hand and employing it regularly, Ryan could have the same, if not more success that Rolly had.
Yeah, but you see how that fight ended for Rolly.
Yeah, but Ryan Garcia is a better boxer than Rolly, with a better corner, better trainer than Rolly's trainer, a better trainer than Gervonta Davis's trainer, Calvin Ford. Ryan Garcia has all the experience and wisdom of the denim master, Joe Goosen.
I mean, if Ryan Garcia does have an out to win this fight, it's his height, his length, and his speed.
That's what's working for him in this thing. He has to fight a cautious fight, a judicious fight, behind the lead hand, behind the jab, not overcommit to his shots, and hopefully he can walk Gervonta Davis into a big left hook, a fast one, like the one he landed on Javier Fortuna.
Because he's fast like Gervonta Davis is fast, but he's got length.
Doesn't actually have to be close to Gervonta to touch him with shots, touch him with punches, but Gervonta, he does have to get within striking distance of Ryan Garcia. That is, unless Ryan makes a mistake like Rolly made a mistake.
So intriguing fight, intriguing conversation, but it might all be much ado of nothing if these guys don't fight.
Even though Bob said he'd pick Ryan to win that thing and win it decisively, he says he doesn't see it happening.
And it might not.
We'll see. In men's middleweight news, the WBA Championships Committee, in another decision following the world title reduction plan, ordered the bout between middleweight super champion Gennady Golovkin and his mandatory challenger, regular champion secondary titleist Lara.
That's as decent a fight as any for an aging fighter like Gennady Golovkin who doesn't want to retire.
Aging fighter versus aging fighter. Bit of a backstory there, and we talked about that in my previous video. I wonder if this fight will come off. You know, Gennady Golovkin could take a page out of Manny Pacquiao's book. When Manny Pacquiao parted ways with his promoter, his then promoter, Top Rank, he ventured over there to the PBC.
You guys remember? After the Jeff Horn fight, he left Top Rank.
Had a fight with an aging Lucas Matisse, knocked him out, then he crossed over to the PBC, fought Adrian Bronier, which led him to the Keith Thurman fight where he won the WBA title. Maybe Gennady will take a page out of Manny's book and go over there for 2 or 3 fights because they have 1 or 2 fights for him. A Lara fight, which has just been ordered, and a potential Charlo unification match.
They got options for that guy over there.
The negotiation period will be 30 days and began on September 23rd when the communication was sent to the parties. While it will last until October 23rd, they have until October 23rd to reach a deal. If they don't, it goes to a purse bid. We don't know how bad Gennady wants to keep that WBA title, how bad he wants to keep that belt.
He might drop it. If he does, maybe Lara ends up fighting somebody for it, or maybe they just elevate him to full champion.
If they were to elevate him to full champion, there's a champion, another one right there on the same side of the street as Lara, they could make a fight with. Jermall Charlo, who's in dire need of interesting fights and interesting opponents. In that situation, a unification match with his longtime stablemate Lara would be just what the doctor ordered, and it's an aging Lara after all.
You know that today's Lara's legs are gone. He don't spend anywhere near as much time on his bicycle as he used to.
Every so often they thaw the old guy from out of his cryo sleep, wheel him out to fight some no-hoper like Cornflake Lamanna or Greg Vendetti.
It's interesting. I said it before and I'll say it again. I could really go for an old man fight between Gennady and Lara.
Still an interesting fight. They're in similar stages of their careers. Yes, Lara is aging. He's not the same fighter that he used to be, but neither is Gennady. And while Gennady is coming off of that loss to Canelo Alvarez, Gennady fought a safety-first kind of fight in that fight. You could see he didn't want to commit to his punches, didn't really want to commit to his power shots, didn't throw all that many power shots. He didn't pick it up towards the tail end, until the tail end of the fight.
So maybe he goes over there for 2 fights, and one of those fights is a Lara fight.
You know what they say? Power is the last thing to go, but a fighter's legs, that's the first. And Lara's legs, they really aren't what they used to be, whereas Gennady Golovkin's power looks like it's still there. It's still intact. A less mobile Lara is an easier Lara to hit. And Lara's been floored before by lesser punchers than Gennady Golovkin.
Yeah, gotta wonder if Gennady's still got that cast iron chin of his. You know he has it. He just went 12 rounds with Canelo at 168 pounds.
Didn't exactly get ragdolled in that fight, but he ate a few hard shots in that fight, and took them well.
Did say he's not retiring. He did say he still has 2 belts at 160 pounds, so why not defend them against Lara?
It's an option. He said he's a network and promotional free agent. Beyond that Canelo Alvarez fight, which is over and done now, I don't know. Maybe DAZN offers that guy a new deal to stay on board, stay on that side of things, and take on a Jaime Munguia. You know, maybe he drops the WBA title, lets Lara have it, decides to defend his IBF title against Jaime, who's in dire need of a high-profile opponent. That's yet another option.
There was a rumor floating around last week that things fell apart between Jaime and John Ryder. They were supposed to be fighting, but DAZN didn't want to pay for it?
I mean, I don't know how true that is, but that is just something that I heard. And, you know, Jaime does need a high-profile opponent. It's about time. That kid's got a lot of fights, and he's just been hovering around out there on the outskirts.
Golovkin versus Munguia, hypothetically, on Cinco de Mayo? That makes dollars.
And in boxing, that makes sense. So maybe that's what that guy decides to do, or maybe he fights Lara. Who knows? We'll see what the future holds for Gennady Golovkin, who's under orders. He's on the clock. In men's super middleweight news, there seem to be reports circulating that Canelo Alvarez could be out for as long as a year to undergo surgery on his hand.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. Canelo Alvarez has kept a busier schedule than all of his contemporaries, and he might be burned out.
He might need some time away from boxing. He might very well need some time away from the sport. Face of boxing and cash cow in this country that he might be, he's only human.
And it's not like he needs to fight, like he's strapped for cash or anything. You know what this guy makes per fight.
More money than some people will see in their entire lifetime. On top of that, he's set to have a role in the upcoming Creed movie with Michael B. Jordan, and whatever money he made from that, however big or small a role that might be, Canelo Alvarez ain't a guy that's got to get out there just to keep the lights on.
Canelo Alvarez himself says he'll be taking a break from boxing due to a busy schedule in 2022.
And will require surgery on his left hand injury that has plagued him since the Caleb Plant fight late last year. Canelo is said to have a TFCC tear, which is a cartilage in the wrist that has affected his body's abilities to move joint without him feeling considerable pain. He has claimed that he couldn't even hold a glass at times, telling ESPN that it was fucked, and plans to chase down a rematch with Bivol once he is cleared for competition. Rehabilitation could take 8 to 12 weeks.
Well, that's most of what's left in this year.
Although no one was expecting Canelo Alvarez to squeeze in another fight before this year was out. No. If he's going to return, it would be in May or maybe as late as September. Some people seem to think that Canelo Alvarez may end up taking even more time away, to where maybe he don't even fight at all next year. That's what some people seem to think he might do. He could. Maybe he should. I know a lot of fighters out there hot on his trail. They're not going to be happy about that, but you know what? A lot of fighters weren't happy when Floyd Mayweather took his time away from the sport. What was it, like 2 years?
He was away a long while. Some people said he was avoiding fights.
I mean, that's what they were saying at the time, that he was avoiding fights with the likes of Paul Williams and Antonio Margarito, Miguel Cotto.
That's what they were saying. Some people weren't happy about it, but he did it anyway.
And perhaps Canelo Alvarez should take a page out of Floyd Mayweather's playbook. Maybe what he needs is some time away from the sport, because he has been busier than his contemporaries, beating champion after champion, unifying an entire weight class in about, 11 months?
A division that was happy to stay divided up until he landed there.
Which is why none of those guys are going to get any sympathy from me. David Benavidez, least of all, who seems to be the most vocal these days about getting a Canelo Alvarez fight. But what has the man done? He's been there through 2 separate cycles of champions, 3 if you count Canelo, and the man hasn't unified anything or beat anyone of note.
You fucked off your alphabet title 2 times outside of the ring, my friend. What do you expect to feel sorry for you?
Because I don't. David Benavidez seems to be in a pole position to challenge Canelo at some point for the green belt. But if Canelo Alvarez ends up sitting out all of next year, maybe he vacates that green belt, and maybe David becomes champion by default.
There's a lot of ways this could break down.
Maybe Canelo Alvarez sits out the whole year. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he returns later on in the year, in September. Eddie Hearn has declared that he's already talking to Canelo Alvarez's team about a potential Dimitri Bivol rematch in 2023, providing Bivol beats Gilberto Ramirez on November 5th. He said he believes Canelo will absolutely remain with Matchroom.
Why wouldn't he? Look at how much money he's making.
There's still a lot of people out there that are struggling to believe that this Gennady Golovkin trilogy was as successful commercially as DAZN's press release would have you believe. There are a lot of people that are wrestling with that, and I don't know why, because this is Canelo Alvarez we're talking about here. $22 million gate. He sold 800,000 pay-per-views with Caleb Plant. He can't sell a little more than that with a more well-known guy?
Where's your fucking common sense?
Who knows for sure what Canelo's going to do? I feel like if Zurdo Ramirez upsets the apple cart for Dimitri Bivol, well, there goes that rematch between Dimitri and Canelo. There won't be anything in it for Canelo.
Bragging rights, maybe, but not a belt.
The sequel would lose some of its luster if Zurdo ends up dishing out Dimitri Bivol his first professional loss. I mean, that's not saying there's no value in the second fight, no value in a rematch, but I remember hearing...
I heard that Canelo himself said, if Dimitri loses that Zurdo Ramirez fight, he's not interested in fighting him for a second time. But he also said he doesn't want to have to fight his countrymen. He doesn't want to have to box Mexican fighters. And that is what Zurdo Ramirez is. A Mexican national like Canelo's a Mexican national. So if Zurdo wins that fight, what does that mean? It's too soon to tell, but at minimum what you can expect is that Zurdo will start calling out Canelo the same way David Benavidez has been calling out Canelo. With the difference being that, at least in my eyes, Zurdo would be more worthy of a Canelo Alvarez fight than the underachieving David Benavidez. Let's be honest. David, Zurdo, neither one of them's got a resume
Good one.
to write home about. They don't. But if Zurdo ends up beating Dimitri, well, Dimitri Bivol beat Canelo Alvarez. Dimitri Bivol, that's a better name than any name you'll find on David Benavidez's resume. In a situation like that, I'd sooner advocate for Zurdo versus Canelo than Benavidez versus Canelo. Benavidez, you had your chance. That Golovkin fight might very well have been Canelo Alvarez's last fight in the super middleweight division. Might be. There is the matter of Canelo Alvarez's rank in the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list now that he's gotten himself back in the winner's bracket with his first successful title defense of his undisputed crown at 168 pounds. I told you guys, all it's going to take for Canelo to get integrated back into the list is a successful title defense. Because he is still an undisputed champion, a 4-division champion overall, having beaten, 7 or 8 champions and taken their belts from them? I already hear it now. The boo birds and the critics who won't like that Canelo Alvarez ranks in as the #1 pound-for-pound fighter on the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list. The criteria is what the criteria is. The rules are what the rules are. If you can show me a 4-division champion who's beaten more champions than Canelo Alvarez, a guy who's been a champion at more weights than Canelo, a guy who's beaten more champions than Canelo, taken their belts from them. Show me somebody. Show me somebody who's been more active than Canelo the last 2 years against champions. It's not Usyk. Usyk's fought 2 times, only 2 times in the last 2 years. Terrence Crawford, he has yet to fight this year. He only fought once last year. You know, he's only fought once this year, whereas Canelo has fought twice. Kazuto Ioka has only fought once this year, whereas Canelo has fought twice. Jermel Charlo has only fought once this year, whereas Canelo has fought twice. The same applies to Errol. The same applies to Artur. The same applies to Josh. You say that Canelo's looked less than spectacular his last 2 fights? Well, maybe it's because he's busier than all of these guys. It's easier to go out there looking fresh and revitalized when you barely fight, when you barely get out there, and nobody's getting out there more often than Canelo, and none of these guys are more accomplished than he is. It's not the only update. This past Thursday, Shakur Stevenson lost his title on the scales. The moment that news broke, he was ejected from the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list per the rules that govern it. You need an alphabet title just to be considered, much less ranked, and if you lose your title on the scales, you're out. The rules are what the rules are, and they are in place for a reason. Former undisputed super lightweight champion Josh Taylor has lost considerable ground. He has dropped down from number 6 to number 9. He's vacated several of his alphabet titles. He's only got 1 now, and he hasn't been very active. And the last time we saw him, didn't look good. So he has lost considerable ground, but he has not yet been dethroned as his division's Ring Magazine and lineal champion. So he's still there, but he's losing ground fast. These are the latest set of updates to the current Ring IQ pound-for-pound list. Based on the governing criteria, this is how the cookie crumbles, whether you like it or not.
Comprendo, friendo.